my hair metal revolution family. Today is New Year's Eve. What does that mean? Tonight, today is the last day of 2025. So I thought that I moved some shows around. I moved the Def Leppard show about that band to Friday. The show was originally supposed to be yesterday, but I was at the VA hospital for appointments. So we're doing it today. And I thought we'd talk about our fallen heroes, not just the ones we lost this year. We lost two major people this year, and we're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about some major musicians that we have lost in the past, right? Unfortunately, as my good friend Danny would tell a lot of you, we're young. Our hearts are young, but we're getting older. And what sucks is for us who's getting older, we're losing our artists from the 60s, 70s, 80s, some in the 90s, some from old age, some from sickness, some from overdose. I mean, there's a lot of things, a lot of artists that we have lost. And so I thought it'd be a fun to just talk about it. Just get together and talk about some of the artists that we have lost, and we're going to lose more in 2026. We just know it. It's going to happen. Now, what's funny is I shouldn't bring this up, right? But I see some comments, or I'll see like an email, because on the thumbnail I have Ozzy and Ace Frehley on there, because those are the two that we are the biggest that we've lost in 2025. I get this email: "You're an idiot. They're from the 70s." And it's like, dude, does it even matter? Doesn't matter what 70s version, 80s version, right? I didn't discover Ozzy, Ace and them until the 80s, right? I was born in 1973. I never knew he was in Black Sabbath. I knew Ozzy from Blizzard of Oz and Diary of Madman. Then I learned that he was in Black Sabbath. So for me, all these artists made an impact of my life, mostly in the 80s, because that's when I got into music, right? Got 9 years old, 10 years old. When I was in the 70s, I listened to whatever my father listened to. That was CCR, Leonard Skinner, Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, Alabama. I mean, I've listened to so many artists in the 70s through my father, some of my older brothers. But the bands that I start loving and liking is in the 80s, because that's when, 9, 10 years old, when you start discovering music, when you start loving it all. So some of these artists were more famous in the 70s and the 80s, but I recognize them in the 80s. And this show kind of wraps around about the 80s. So, when you get that comment, and it's almost like, it doesn't matter. We lost these artists. It doesn't matter what generation they're from. They're just great freaking artists. I'll never, I was born in 73. I never had the opportunity to see Jimi Hendrix play. I never had the opportunity to see Randy Rhoads play, because they died at such a young age, right? They died at a young age. So I never was able to discover a lot of them, because they already passed away when I got into music. But when I think about 2025, I mean, let's be honest, Ace Frehley and Ozzy Osbourne, they weren't just legends, right? There are a lot of reasons why, Ace Frehley and Kiss, they're a band that a lot of reasons why bands became bands because of them, right? Ozzy is a lot of reasons why people became singers themselves. When you see the bravery of Ozzy out there, you got to admire it. These aren't just legendary musicians. They were beyond legendary. They helped create other bands because they exist, right? How many guitar players became guitar players that when you saw Ace Frehley for the first time? Because Ace wasn't just like a guitar player, right? He was one of the first entertainers guitar players, a man who could play and entertain you at the same time. It was like broad, Kiss was like Broadway on stage for rock, right? Nobody's seen something like that. I get it. Yes, you have Black Sabbath, you had Aerosmith, and they're your typical rock heavy bands that play live. But Kiss brought that entertainment value of explosion. You're going to see a show. And Ace Frehley inspires so many people. And it's fantastic. And we're gonna talk about Oz and Ace, and then we're gonna go back and talk about other artists. One of the things. Hold on, I gotta look at one thing. Hold on, one thing. Hold on. I have to look at one thing. One of the things oh, hey, all right. We got a Kiss fan here. That's cool. That's awesome. One of the things I admired about Ace Frehley, a lot of people don't talk about this. They talk about the guitar playing, the makeup. But think about this. When Ace Frehley was in the beginning of Kiss, I know our Kiss fan could probably tell you that, everybody knows Ace Frehley has solo albums that, he sings, he plays guitar. But until the album Love Gun came out, that was their 6th album, he never sang on any other albums. He was, for whatever reason, he was shy, or he didn't want to. He wasn't comfortable with singing yet, right? He wasn't. It wasn't until he made the song Shock Me that came out on the album Love Gun, 6 albums later. So, if he designed a logo and makeup and the coolest of them all, yeah, you're right. But what I'm getting at is he didn't sing his first song until Love Gun. I mean, just think about that. And when he did his first song, then he did some others, did the awesome remake 2000 Man from Rolling Stones on the disco album, almost Dynasty, right? So that's inspiring because he didn't start out as a singer, just a guitar player, but the inspiration of he could do it because he wrote Cold Gin. He wrote a lot of the big Kiss songs. He just did not sing on them until Love Gun. He decided that I am going to sing. And beyond that, and then, his solo albums, one of my favorite Ace Frehley song, Rock Soldiers, right? Sing, you're going to play without an ace in your deck. I mean, that Ace Frehley song, Rock Soldiers, reminded me so much of like a Johnny Cash song. How Johnny Cash tells stories, through his music and all that with the lyrics. Rock Soldier was like that for me. So I felt a lot of Johnny Cash in the song Rock Soldiers. I know some people like Rock Soldiers, Johnny Cash. Yeah, it does. And he became I think I love the sound of his voice. I mean, listen, Paul Stanley is your typical great lead singer. We all respect that. He's a great singer. Gene Simmons is also a great singer on his own. They both have different voices. And, but I love Ace Frehley's voice. The only thing I wish that Ace could have done more songs with the earlier stuff to have more Kiss songs with Ace singing on it. But beyond that, just to be inspired, yeah, Shock Me off the Love Gun album. You know what I mean? Like, Shock Me started him off, and I love Ace Frehley's last album, 10,000 Volts. I loved it. I thought it was one of the best albums 2024. It was really freaking awesome, and I always liked his voice. Was he like the best frontman type voice? No, he's guitar player first. But it was raw, it was real, and I enjoyed it. So that's inspiring. Now, if you go back to Ozzy Osbourne, what's inspiring about Ozzy, for whatever reason, we're not going to get into the reasons why he got fired from Black Sabbath. We know the drug stories. We know it all. We know it. we don't we're not going to rehash that, but to be able to go solo, and him and Sharon are able to get that lineup, especially for Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman. Ozzy and Sharon should be credited so much of getting that original Ozzy Osbourne solo album lineup, because we all know they wrote most of the songs. Ozzy helped tribute, yeah, but we all know the architect of those songs came from the band members. But, I know a lot of people say, well, Ozzy didn't write it. It was really blah, 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 blah. Sharon and Ozzy found these people, put them together, and they did it. Ozzy survived being let go from Black Sabbath. In their way, probably for good reason. The drugs, they needed it. Even though he was solo, the drugs didn't go away at all. But beyond that, to have a true second life. And when you look at everything that Ozzy's been through, somehow he never went away. He never lost where he needed a comeback, right? I mean, you get fired from Black Sabbath, big hit. You find a gift of guitarist Randy Rhoads, a gift. I mean, that was a gift to get Randy Rhoads, right? And then you lose Randy. And then you get another beautiful gift, Jakey Lee, into Ozzy band. Jakey Lee, who wrote Bark at the Moon, played the riffs of Bark at the Moon. And the Ultimate Sin album, which I love, it don't get enough respect as it should get. The first song, The Ultimate Sin, is a bitching ass song, and the riffs on those albums from Jakey Lee is fantastic. Then Jakey Lee decided to leave the band, and then he finds a young arm slinger, Zach Wilder. I mean, Ozzy. I don't know if it's Sharon's magic or how they got great guitarist, right? And then grunge came in. It was like at the time, the studios were all turning their backs on the music that helped made them money. Turn their backs, and so a lot of bands suffered. Not Ozzy. No More Tears was huge. Ozzy somehow, I don't know if it's because the genius of Sharon, having to show the Osbournes, but Ozzy never went away. That was the most beautiful thing about Ozzy. I mean, I guess you could say, Ace Frehley kind of went away when he quit Kiss, until he came out with his first solo album in '87. So in a lot of ways, Ace Frehley kind of gone away, but Ozzy never really gone away, right? He kept going and kept going, and one of the best traits of Ozzy and Ace is those interviews. I mean, they were just so real, right? Ozzy and Ace were just so real. There was nothing fake about these guys. Ozzy just tells you what he thinks, and he doesn't give a shit what you think about him. I love when Ozzy used to watch himself live performances on his videos, and he's like, "Who's that? That's me." He's embarrassed of watching himself, and I get that. When I do a video, I can't watch myself either. Every time I watch myself, a lot of you might agree with this. I always tell myself, "Oh God, I suck so bad," and a lot of people probably agree with that. Suck so bad. I still think Kiss Alive 2 is one of the best live albums. The great thing about Kiss live album, you can debate Kiss live album 1 and 2, like which one's more your favorite. And that's a great argument because that means they're both so great. You know, it's just when you talk about live albums, if somebody, you know, everybody has their own taste, right? I always say that. I always say everybody has the right to their own taste. But I will say this: if somebody came out with the top 10 best live album, there's like a couple bands that their live albums has to be on there, right? Cheap Trick, live at the Budokan, and Kiss Alive albums. You cannot have a top 10 list of your favorite live albums without Kiss Alive. You can't. That's the only time I'll say you're foolish. You are completely foolish. You know, and look at that, you know, and how many bands. I mean, Kiss almost died because their albums weren't selling until their live album came out. That saved the band. Right? Saved the band. Peter Snarsound on a live too is epic. You know, the thing about Peter Criss had a song with Kiss before Ace Frehley did. You know, he did? Yeah, of course. He got Beth and some Hard Luck Woman, some other songs. I mean, Peter Criss has songs before Ace did, you know? So to have a guy who was most shy to sing, and then later on, he made solo albums singing. I know with Freedy's Comet, he did like half the songs. He had the other guy sing the other half, but then he started to do the whole album himself. And I still say to this day, nothing against Paul Stanley. Nothing. But that song, Hide Your Heart, I love Ace Frehley's voice on that one better than Paul. But we all know Paul overall is the better singer. I mean, we're not debating who's the better singer. But sometimes the way a voice sounds on certain albums, kind of like, right? Paul Stanley wrote Gods of Thunder, right? Paul Stanley wrote that. But who sang it? Gene Simmons. That tells you the genius of Paul Stanley, like getting with these people like, you know what? I love Gods of Thunder, but it does sound better with Gene. I mean, that's a smart band. That's a smart band. You know, and we're gonna look here. I got here, and I'm gonna miss a lot of singers who we have lost, right? We have lost Hooligan. Yeah, that's a good song, Chris. That's a good one. That's a good one. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying Peter Criss was doing more songs than Ace Frehley did, so it was very inspiring to see that. Ace Frehley broke through that ice. Ace Frehley did. There's a lot of musicians that we have lost, and I went to come up again. This is the last show for 2025, and I want to talk about a lot of the artists that we have lost. Right? You know, for whatever reason. You know, Janie Lane. That was a sad loss because what happened to Warrant when the grunge thing came out and people started blaming Janie Lane because the song Cherry Pie and all that, it was uncalled for. It was very uncalled for, you know, and, you know, his addiction, he just couldn't beat the monkey, right? He just couldn't beat the monkey. And Janie Lane was such a, his writing, his lyrics got so much better and better and better. You know, if you survive, would him and Warrant ever, you know, would they be together today? We'll never know if they would have gotten back together. But Janie Lane was a very sad loss. You know, he did that VH1 show, losing weight, whatever, or it's sad. Kevin DeBro. Sorry about that. Kevin DeBro, right? He is such an interesting person because, quite right, the very first #1 heavy metal album ever, right? Then Kevin had to start talking crap about every other band out there and then just concentrating on his own. I mean, caused his own issues to be fired from his own band, Quiet Riot. You know, he got himself fired. Then he got himself back together. You know, got you would think he got the help he needed. Got back with Quiet Riot. Was it 2007? Or no? Or no. They were about to do like a tour again, and then he overdosed and died. Such a very sad. You know, if Kevin could have calmed down, you know, and just worried about his own music and never got fired from Quiet Riot, you know, where would they have been today? It's one of those things that we're never going to know. Steve Clark, right? Steve Clark, Def Leppard. One of the guitar players that we all just so respected, you know, and of course, I don't know him personally. None of us know him personally, but everything you heard, he's such the nicest guy in the world. You know, he always put stress on himself. You know, the father. You know, we all know part of the reason why he drunk himself to death. You know, it's just Steve Clark had that rawness type of playing. He was, you know, when you look at a lot of like British musicians. When you look at a lot of British musicians, right, they're fine in arts, right? They're like the reason that they always say they're the best actors, not because they're like so much. They do so much training, they do so much classes, you know, book reading. Steve Clark wasn't like that. He was more raw, like learn himself. He carries the guitar like a little bit too low, right? You know, Steve Clark was his own man, right? And you know, that wasn't a fun loss, right? Because you hate seeing good guys, great guys that you never heard complaints about. You know, Steve Clark. That was, Robin Crosby. I mean, we all know he died of AIDS during that period where everybody was doing free sex. Come on, everybody was. We weren't. You know, we weren't, a lot of us, every single one of us, I guarantee, Kiss Brothers, Chris here, Danny, you know, we probably all lucky that we didn't catch that disease, right? None of us was perfect. But Robin Crosby, you know, I can imagine how hard it was for him in the band Rat, just because, you know, the beginning of Rat was Steven Tyler and Robin Crosby. That was your core Rat. In the beginning, you know, Robin Crosby was the lead guitarist of the band. He was in the rhythm. You know, and then, you know, they got Warren DeMartini in the band, and Warren was just a wizard. I mean, Warren just got so much better at guitar where Robin Crosby kind of got pushed in the back. You're still in the band Rat, but you're not going to be the lead guitarist no more. You're now the rhythm guitarist. But when the band was done singing in the studio, you know, Robin Crosby would have stayed. He stayed behind and helped the engineers, the music engineer, producers. He was really intelligent, you know. And if he would have just. It just, I don't know, I'm saying this wrong, but I think if he would have survived and never got AIDS and got off the monkey, because we know he was totally addicted to major drugs, right? Major drugs, that he probably would have been one of the great engineers, producers for future bands because he was learning it. He wanted to learn. He wanted to help. And I mean, and then one of the hardest losses. See, Ozzy was hard and Ace was hard, but they made it in their 70s, right? They made it in their 70s. And Ozzy, his health was, I mean, it it's always going to be a shock when you lose an artist, but it wasn't like a shock that we lost Ozzy, right? Eddie was just Eddie Van Halen was just so young in age, right? And you wonder if he didn't smoke as much as he did. I'm not going to say that's what caused him to have the cancer. I mean, it's most likely it is, but you know what I mean? But to lose him at the age that we lost Eddie, it was difficult to swallow because the body of work that Eddie has already done were masterpiece, right? They were masterpiece. I've seen Eddie so many times live in concert. I mean, I'm sorry, guys. I just saw this. I'm lucky I lived in the 80s. I served more females than McDonald's. I'm saying. I love that. You know, and it just, if Eddie would have survived, right? What could have been, right? The more riffs, the more guitar playing, and I really felt, you know, Eddie and Sammy. I know they said they made up, but they made up because Eddie was on his deathbed, right? Really, I mean, that's just be honest. But if he wasn't, you know, I would have loved to see, you know, the band clean back with Sammy. Listen, David's great. David Lee Roth, there's no ever going to be a front man like David Lee Roth, but let's be honest, live, nobody sings better than Sammy Hagar. Sammy Hagar's got one of the best live voices you're ever going to hear, period. And when Eddie was in his prime, when he was so happy in life, when he was happy when he had a singer that could actually like hit every single note there is, Eddie was at his best. And you know, and I've heard that he has so many recordings of his guitar riffs and all that. And I wonder if we're ever gonna one day get some release of his riffs, even if it's just a 30-second riff that he was working on. You know what I mean? I wish somehow we could get some of that. Eddie was a hard one, you know, because you could have got 20 more years out of him, even more. You know, now I'm going to be honest here. I wasn't 100% affected. I was affected with Eddie, then I was affected by Randy Rhoads, just because, you know, Randy Rhoads, right? I was like 9 years old, so I was getting into the music, so I didn't really know Randy Rhoads yet, right? I didn't really. You know what I mean? I wasn't really with Randy as much as like Eddie, because I saw Eddie live in the 80s because they were around. By the time I was going to concerts, you know, Randy Rhoads already passed away, you know, but everybody who I've heard who's seen Randy Rhoads live have all said, you know, what a wonderful human being. All the videos that I've seen him interviews, it was a quiet, and one of the things that I always respected Randy with all the interviews that I saw is, you know, a lot of people don't know, a lot of people do know, you know, he was going to quit Ozzy because he wanted to go back and, you know, learn classical or play classical. He wanted to be a teacher. I mean, a rock star who wants to leave it all to be a classical teacher, to teach people and stuff. I mean, that just tells you the character of Randy Rhoads. You know, I wish I was older enough to be able to see one of his shows. That's one of the artists that, you know, I guess you could say the same thing, you know, Jimi Hendrix, right? I'm never going to have the opportunity to see Jimi Hendrix because he's already passed away. Frankie Benanelli, Quiet Riot, the drummer, I wasn't fully into Quiet Riot, so I never had any kind of connection really. I mean, I don't want to see anybody life to get passed away, right? But I have to be honest with you guys. I wasn't really affected at all when I found out Frankie died because I knew Quiet Riot was Bang Your Head. When I played football in high school, you couldn't play a game without playing Bang Your Head. Because, when you're playing football, right before that game starts, you put on that song, Bang Your Head, you're ready to hit. You're ready to play. You're ready to get punched in the face. You're ready to punch them in the face when you heard Bang Your Head, right? But beyond that, I didn't have a huge connection with the band Quiet Riot. I'm just being honest with you guys. Jack Russell died in 2024. Everything I've heard, I never met Jack Russell, but everything I've heard from people is that he was just such a wonderful guy, and I love these stories how Doc and how Great White, to get their album made, and Great White had to do like an independent album EP and stuff to get noticed. You know what I mean? And the voice that Jack Russell had, Sammy was a great singer, but his best stuff, like I Can't Drive 55 and heavy metal sound, was also so yeah, that stuff was fantastic. Jack Russell had the voice live. There's certain singers, right? There's studio singers, and then there's real live stage type of singers, right? You can say like David Lee Roth, Stephen Pearcy, Vince Neil are fantastic. Hey, it's my brother, Dr. Wu. Hold on, everybody. Hey, Dr. Wu, we're live right now on the Hair Metal channel. What's going on?
Okay, between you and me, all systems green. I got it.
All systems green? Yeah, we're just talking about dead people.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm just letting you know I got 100.
Whoa, shit. I'll call you right back right when I'm done with the show.
Yeah, get it back on the. I just want to let you know I didn't know you were on right now. I
Woo!
just right now. It's I'm 100% green.
Woo! 100% green. You guys right now, everybody in the chat, you're like, green? What does that mean? You're never gonna know. I'll call you right back when the show's done.
All right, bye.
You know what I mean? Those guys were more studio type singers than can actually hit all these ranges live, right? Jack Russell was a freak of nature singing live. Sammy Hagar is a freak of nature. Dio, Ronnie James Dio, freak of nature. Ronnie James Dio, another one who passed away, and I don't see his name on the list. His name should definitely be on here. But Jack Russell, one of the best live voices, and what I've heard from people, one of the most nicest human beings you could ever meet. Did they have a drug problem? They all had drug problems, people. So don't ever bring up what's this say? Jack Russell, once in a lifetime voice. Exactly. I mean, the way he sings on the album, he can sing live. Right? I thought Jack Russell was a breed of dog. I can see that. And that was a hard loss. Because Jack Russell is just such a great singer. Eric Carr, what's so admiring about Eric Carr was a lot of people took his loss hard. And you're like, well, yeah, Eric. And what I mean by that is Eric Carr, came in after they got rid of Peter Criss. Sometimes backup musicians don't get the respect that they should. The thing is about Eric Carr, he did get the respect. Everybody respected Eric Carr. And he's a backup musician. You don't get a lot of that. You just don't. Tim Kelly, Slaughter, 1998 car crash. Yeah, that's never good. I didn't really know Tim Kelly too much. Slaughter, the only really album I liked from Slaughter was Stick It To Ya. I wasn't really Wildlife. I know that song's a remake. I didn't really like Slaughter other albums. I thought the most raw album was Stick It To Ya. John Sykes, White Snake. Again, Ronnie James Dio is not on here. I have so much respect for Dio, so much, because his battle was different than most musicians, right? He started in a lot of bands, but Elf, and then he got his big break with Rainbow, right? Rainbow, Richie Blackman. I mean, great freaking songs. And then he gets let go from Rainbow because Richie wanted more commercial sounding type of music, right? So Dio gets fired from Rainbow, which he started with Richie, and what made that band who they were, right? And then Dio gets in Black Sabbath and really help resurrect Black Sabbath from the dead, from the grave. Black Sabbath was dead after Ozzy. I mean, that band was dead. James Dio gave them a different voice. He could really sing live. He brought Black Sabbath back from the dead, made them relevant again, right? And that didn't work out. And then he went solo and did a fantastic job. I mean, talk about a singer who just didn't go through one band. He goes through Rainbow. And then he had the difficulties to replace Ozzy from Black Sabbath. And then he gets let go from Black Sabbath. That didn't work out. And then instead of quitting, had a solo career and made it. I mean, it's, yeah. And what about let's talk about, somebody wrote in the comments, Prince. Listen, almost every 80s fan, hair metal, glam metal, hard rock, whoever genre you want to say, all respected Prince. All of it. Prince wasn't just a great singer. Prince was a great singer, great songwriter, and man, that man could play that guitar. Never gets the credit he deserved as a great guitar player, a great musician all around. I mean, Prince knew how to play every single musician. Prince that's a hard loss too, Jeff LaBar, that was a hard loss for me because, when I really truly got into music, right? When 86 came around, I was prime, right? I was 13. I was prime. And Cinderella came out. So I was with Cinderella from the beginning, with nice songs. Jeff LaBar would never get like total credit he deserves because when you think of Cinderella, you think of Tom Kiefer for good reason. He was the songwriter. He instructed the music the most. Every song went through Tom. But Jeff had a major part of Cinderella, and that wasn't a good. Hold on a sec. Oh my God. Hold on. Dimebag. I want it to Dimebag. Daryl Abbott and his brother Vinnie Paul Abbott. Dimebag, Pantera. For a lot of people, people credit, Pantera for creating a sound. Which a lot of people forget that their first album or so was just as hair metal, glam metal as all the other bands. And then they get the new singer, Cowboy from Hell, and they found their craft, and the music, the music went forward. The music went forward, so you got to respect that. And then, oh God, there's so many people. Ray Gillen, Badlands, another badass vocalist. Yep, Ray, that's a good one. Ray deserves some respect. Badlands will never get total respect as they should, just because Badlands. That's the band that Jakey Lee helped formed. Paul Gilbert is another lost. I'm trying to. I mean, there's so many. It's it's like we're gonna miss so many singers and musicians and all that in this. Okay, anybody else, people, right now in the chat, you want to bring up names that we have lost, and there's so much more. It's hard to try to remember it all, but we have so many great artists that attribute so much to this world in music. Henrik from Dirty Looks, yep, that's what I mean. Anybody else got names? Pop it in there, and I'll put it on the screen, because sometimes on the spot, it's very hard. It's just very hard to you kick yourself in the ass when like Cliff Burton, Metallica, Cliff Burton. That was a huge loss at the time because Metallica was finding their stride, right? Metallica was rising, and then the accident happened, and we lost Cliff Burton. That's another huge loss. Nikki Sixx died twice. That's where the song "Kickstart My Heart" came from, and it's supposed to be true to this day that the ambulance person said, "I can't have Nikki Sixx die on my watch. I can't have Nikki Sixx die." So Nikki Sixx gets an honorable mention as respect. A man who hasn't died yet, but I guess in a lot of ways could have. And let's not forget Razzle from Honore Rocks, right? Let's not forget Razzle. And I don't want to hear anybody in the chat on that incident. I don't want to hear that. We're not here, because I fucking always hate that. Bitch, get that out of here. Razzle, will never be forgotten. Great singer. I'm trying to think of I know there's so many, right? It's like, let me see. Here's there's a list. Of course, you go back to Jim Morrison, who died way too young. Bon Scott. Who knows? Nobody could really predict where AC/DC would have been today with Bon Scott, right? Heaven and Hell wasn't an international hit at that time. It sold a lot of millions of copies now, but they weren't fully international until after Bon Scott passed away. Brian Johnson, Back in Black, 50 million copies. But I'm always curious, if Bon Scott never died, right? What would have been, right? Bon Scott, that was a huge loss. And again, there's just so many. There's just so many. I'm trying to. It's hard to think of. John Bonham from Led Zeppelin, right? Died of his own vomit. That's horrible. That's just John Lennon. I know, not 80s hard rock and all that, but John Lennon. We have just lost so many artists, and I'm just trying to. Because we're gonna miss so many people. T-Rex, you got Steve Curry from T-Rex, that's no longer with us. I'm trying to, And it's all everybody. I mean, it's almost impossible to get everybody's name here. I know, like, here's a guy who's not even a rock star, but died way too young. John Belushi. He died way too young. I know he wasn't a musician, but I always respected that. Of course, we said Cliff Burton. I'm trying to think of. I'm looking at a list too because there's so many people out there, and I know somebody's gonna leave a comment and say, "Hey, you forgot this guy. You forgot this guy. You forgot this guy." Everybody in the chat. I'm sorry. I can't remember his name. Oh my God, I don't know why. The member is ZZ Top. Oh my God, Sam Kinison. That's a hard one. Michael Jackson. There's a lot of huge Michael Jackson fan. I wasn't really a Michael Jackson fan. But about Lenny, Lemmy, Motorhead. That's a huge loss. That's a huge loss. Let me. I'm just scrolling through here to see if anybody. I'm missing a lot of people. Let's see here. I'm trying to. Well, you know what? It doesn't matter. We lost a lot of people, and this show today was about remembering all the artists from back then. All the artists from back then, and the celebration, and and we had to look forward to 2026. There was parts of 2025 that I don't know. I was going to survive out of some things, right? I had many surgeries, a lot of things that kept me away from doing live shows during the middle of the year. I did a lot of shorts on hair metal, this channel here, because I couldn't do live yet because there was a lot of issues, medical issues I had to go do and all that. But I'm so glad I'm here. I'm going to continue to be doing the live shows on Tuesdays and Friday. Today, just because I didn't do one yesterday, this Friday we're going to talk about Def Leppard and all that. So I hope we're going to make 2026 a good year for all the members of the channel. I'm going to start doing more what I call community live stuff, where I send out everybody who's a subscriber to the channel. And Danny, you'll have that pass. Don't worry about that, Danny, where it's just going to be us talking, right? Because I want to talk to you guys for members of the channel that helps, that take time out of your own pocket to, basically you're donating money, right? And I respect that. I respect you guys for that. So I'm going to start doing a monthly community thing with the members of the channel, just where I'll send out a Zoom thing. You all just jump on. It's not live. It's just for us members, So 2026, I'm going to try to give back more to you guys. And 2026, and one thing you don't never have to worry about me, guys. I'm always going to be real to you. I'm always going to be 100% real. I'm never going to. If I can't be honest about an album, they want me to interview, I'm not going to interview the guy, because I will never. Hopefully, whoever I interview, I love their album. But if the album really wasn't that good, I'm not going to say the album was good when it's not. I won't do that. But I'll work on trying to get some artists to interview. But sometimes I love talking to you guys. I'm going to be honest here. I'd rather have a fellow YouTuber on here sometimes with some artists, because I love talking to people where we're all on the same level, right? Sometimes you talk to these artists, it's a playbook. What you're going to hear. Sometimes it's a playbook. Sometimes you get an artist who feels so comfortable with you, and you guys can just talk about everything, which that's what I want. Because I don't want scripts. I don't do scripts. As soon as somebody goes, you're going to interview him, but you can't ask about this. Okay, I don't want to talk to him. Even though I'm not letting you ask that question. But as soon as they do that, I can't do that. Show's about being real, about being honest with each other, you know? So, oh, this is one of my favorite shirts. This is The Last Starfighter from the 80s. If you haven't seen this movie, you should see it. The computer graphics might not be as good as it is now, but Last Starfighter is a good movie. So expect a lot of good things in 2026. You know, I'm gonna get way more involved with all you guys and start asking if some of you guys want to come on the show and tell us the music that you love and why you love it. Right? This channel is about us being real, and we're always going to be real. We're never going to sell out, and I'm never going to do like shows where somebody sends me a box and I don't have to open up a box and show everybody. I don't kind of do that because like not everybody's getting a box, right? I feel like, look what I got, you don't got. I'm not into that kind of stuff, right? I'm not. You know, if somebody sends me something, I'll during the show, I'll give my thank you. But I can't do a show on opening up from studios and stuff that look what I got. You don't got it, but I got it. Can't do that. I feel fake. I feel too fake doing that. And I won't do that to you guys. So I hope you guys all have a great New Year's Eve tonight. I want you guys all to be safe. Be safe. We lost a lot of artists, and we don't need to lose each other for stupid things right there, right? If you don't have to be on the street, don't drive. I'm not worried about you, as my father used to tell me. I'm not worried about you being a bad driver. It's everybody else who's a bad driver. You don't know what they're doing. So, you know, I want you guys all to be safe, right? We don't need no unnecessary people getting hurt tonight. Be safe. You know, and if you're a person that has a lot of animals, you should be with your animals. I mean, they're gonna get scared tonight when they hear all the fireworks. You know, I mean, shoot, look at that thing. That thing, I don't know if that thing's alive. Hey, are you alive? He moved. He's alive. I didn't know he was behind me. So, so beyond that, guys, I really love all of you. I'll see you on Friday. I'll see you next time on Hair Metal Revolution.